Hey guys, welcome back to another episode of the Big Bros podcast. My name is Ilan and I'm joined by my lovely friend and co-host, Jeremy. How are you?
I'm great, mate. Can't complain. Just had some teriyaki chicken, full of energy, full of thoughts. Let's go. How are you, mate?
I'm well. I had my chicken udon noodle, so I'm feeling pretty energetic as well. Jeremy, today we're going to be speaking about the value of asking for things. Primarily why when we're younger we feel a bit fearful of asking for the things that we want, the necessity of it, some of our personal experiences. But first, let's break right into it. What does it mean to ask for things? I know it sounds like a very self-explanatory term, but it can encompass quite a few things. What do you reckon?
I think it encompasses things like your jobs, your work opportunities, relationships with people, whether that be romantic or just on a friendship level, businesses. I think the list is endless in terms of what it means to not be afraid to ask for things. So these are all the things that we'll dive into, but I think we'll mainly specifically talk about what it means to not be afraid to ask with regards to, jobs and friends and relationships and things like that. Yeah.
Yeah, so I suppose a lot of it is to do with, it can be asking for big things, but it can also ask for small things. At the end of the day, you're trying to attain a certain goal, and there is no harm in asking. I think the reason we wanted to go out and make this episode is because when we're younger, there are a few obstacles, I think, in our head that can buffer against us making a decision to ask someone something, whether it's asking out a girl on a date, asking, someone at the coffee shop for 10% off their coffee. Things like that. It can be big or small.
Yeah.
Asking for that promotion at work.
Exactly. And I think it kind of also ties into that sense of imposter syndrome, which I think we feel more so when we're younger.
Would you like to elaborate on that?
Yeah, well, it's like the thought of we're young, we're a kid, or we're only a teen. You might be confronted with someone that's older than you, whether that be a boss at work or an older friend, and you're kind of like intimidated and you think, well, who am I to ask for something to better myself or for the benefit of me? So I think that's where the imposter syndrome, which we spoke about in our first episode, but it all interrelates, doesn't it? And that kind of weaves into this episode as well.
And you know what else interrelates is that whole idea of the spotlight effect. The idea being that everyone is concerned that the entire world around them is merely focused on them. And I think when you're younger and you're afraid to ask for something that you want, you're afraid that those around you, whether it's your boss, whether it's your friends, whether it's someone that you like, they're going to look at you in a negative way merely for you wanting to express a desired question. So I think as we're younger, and I hear this from my parents, I hear this from people who are a little bit older, they say, as you get older, you realize that, the spotlight effect is one of those things that you realize that you see the uselessness of it because most people don't actually care.
Have you felt that spotlight effect?
Mate, I feel it every single day of my life. And
really?
Yeah, 100%. I think
That's bold.
No, 100% I feel it. But the thing is, I try to be aware of it and I tell myself, even when I do this podcast, right, I always think, how are people going to perceive me? But then I also remind myself, no one really gives a shit. And the thing is, everyone is so concerned. And that's the key takeaway about the spotlight effect is that people are so concerned about what they appear like to be to the rest of the world that no one actually has time to concentrate on others. Yeah. That's usually what helps me.
Yeah. And I think we're so used to thinking about the spotlight effect and we feel it internally, like our heart starts palpitating if, we want to approach a girl to ask her out or, ask a girl for a drink in a club or ask that boss for a promotion at work. Your heart starts beating, you start getting the sweats because you feel like that spotlight is on you in that moment, which it like relatively is in that moment. But after a couple minutes or after the conversation you have, the spotlight goes away. Chances are it's just a blink of a moment through, within the lifetime, and the person you're talking to probably forgets about it moments later, don't they?
It's true because most people don't care about
unless
others.
You've totally embarrassed yourself. Yeah. Then they might not forget about it.
But I've got to reverse the question on you. Do you feel that spotlight effect?
Yeah, like you said, we do feel it. I do feel it. I don't know if I feel it as often as you said, because you mentioned that you feel it every day. And I think I like to kind of disassociate or try to at least disassociate those thoughts from my everyday life. I think if I'm constantly thinking about my actions in terms of what I'm doing, how I'm communicating with people, I'm going to just like eat myself up and always second guess myself and have that self-doubt as to whether my actions are meaningful in that moment or whether they're not meaningful, whether they align with me, whether they don't align with me. And so I think trying to like just have the mindset that shit's going to be okay. Don't need to always be thinking that you're in the spotlight. People probably don't care all that much. That's really helped me to not think about being in the spotlight all the time and therefore not constantly doubt myself, because doubts are normal. We all doubt ourselves. We all have moments where we think, fuck, we probably shouldn't have acted that way, or we probably didn't do something that aligns with our values in that moment. But that's normal. So I think, yeah, I just try to disassociate that constantly from my thoughts every single day.
Well, I think it's good that you've got that self-awareness. I think in my case as well, just because I feel it doesn't necessarily mean that I let it kind of impose itself on what I want to do. So it comes tying it back to asking for what you want.
Yeah.
I try to just remind myself that, you know, you still want something at the end of the day, you should go after it and get it. So that's usually one reason why when we're younger, we tend to not ask for things that we want, is that fear of judgment of what others may say. Another reason, and this is quite a common one, and I started thinking about where it becomes more prominent, and it's assuming that those around you know what you already want. So you assume that those around you are going to deliver or satisfy your needs. And it happens so much in relationships where a couple might be in, like, I don't know, you'd see them in maybe like relationship counseling, and one of the partners are like, well, I expect them to know what I want. And oftentimes
it's like always in a movie, they're in like relationship counseling and someone says something and then the partner turns to them and they're like, huh? What? Like, I didn't know that.
But it's so true, because I think people are so afraid of asking for what they want. And when you couple that in with just assuming that your partner might expect or know what you want, that can usually be a recipe for disaster, because that's where miscommunication comes in. That's where conflict comes in. So I think when we're younger, we tend to have that like belief that, they should just know what we want.
Yeah.
And it's
my actions imply it.
The actions imply it. And look,
they probably don't all that much. They probably don't. And there is, I think a little bit of confusion comes with the saying actions speak louder than words. But I think there's a lot of merit in words and in verbalizing how you feel, what you want. I think that whole actions speak louder than words can lead people down a pathway of confusion at times.
100%. And that's something that I've actually tried to employ in my own relationship, is that whenever I want something, I don't just assume that my girlfriend will know what I want, but I'll ask her for it. And, all is done in a respectful way. But that's the whole point, is you can't assume that people can read your mind. Most people aren't mind readers. As we said, most people are so fixated on how they are viewed by others that they don't even think about what someone is expecting from them.
Yeah.
Or, I don't know if I butchered that, but
no,
you get my point. You get my point.
Yeah, I know what you mean. Yeah, it's very important to verbalize what you want. And I think it's also important to do it in a way that is not coming across as entitled, needy. This is the next point, because we're sitting here and we're encouraging people to ask what they want, ask for what they want, and to not be afraid to ask for things in life. But it comes with a certain approach, to not be pushy, to not be entitled, to not be so maybe selfish in the way you ask. It needs to come from a place of care and love, doesn't it?
It definitely does. And I think there's a delicate dance of being able to take no for an answer, but at the same time, also not taking no for an answer. And I can give you a really good...
Within reason.
Reason. I can give you a really good example of when I kind of applied that principle. A couple of years ago, I was really keen on getting an internship through my uni, just like a work integrated unit.
Yeah.
And I didn't get in initially. And I ended up writing to those, doing the selection, saying, hey, look, if there happens to be an opening in any spot, please do reach out to me. And every part of me didn't want to write that email back, because when I saw the rejection, I was like, nah, I did not want to go. I just want to kind of, cry in a ball and be like, I'm a failure. I didn't get this. I what I was doing there really was I was tying my self-worth with my achievements.
Yeah.
But I decided, you know what, like, I'm not going to take no for an answer, but I won't be overly pushy. I'll just say I tried to entertain the thought of, if there's an opening, reach out to me, because I don't know who else might be reaching out. Luckily, a month later, I heard back from them, and I completely forgot about it. I just thought, you know what, it is what it is. But a month later, I was doing just my normal studying, checked my emails, and I say, hey, Ilan, we've seen there's been an opening in X, Y, and Z. Can you, would you be okay to come for an interview? And I said, 100%. I remember I told my mum, and that she said to me, that's the value of asking for things. But it's that delicate dance of knowing when to take no for an answer and knowing when to just, plant that seed.
Yeah, well, that's the point. You've planted that seed, but your intentions were good. It wasn't like you were asking from a place of neediness. Like, I need this. I want this. I want this. I can offer it. I can offer certain expertise to you, or I'm just really keen on this opportunity. And it wasn't asking from a place of, please let me know by so-and-so date, or looking forward to hearing from you. It's just putting it out there in the universe, putting it in that mind, planting the seed, like you said, and what will be, will be. And in your case, it came about.
And I hope that's what worked, because the last thing I ever wanted to do is come off as entitled, right? Because that is the biggest deterrent for anyone, is when you view someone as entitled. So I do think it's a really delicate dance, as I said earlier.
Yeah.
If you look at the most successful people in the world, they don't tend to take no for an answer.
And they're really business-minded,
thinking
entrepreneurs.
Business. I think they've done studies, and look, honestly, I should probably go and find these studies if I'm being a reputable scientist, but I'm just being,
just being a big bro.
Being a big bro right now. They say that, the most, and it might sound like common sense, but the most kind of successful people in the world are those who aren't afraid to ask for things. And you look at it in occupational settings, they're the same employees that will go to their boss and say, is there any room for my salary to be upgraded? My market value, I could get a better salary at another job. And as long as that employee has communicated it in a very respectful way, they are demonstrating a trait of going for what they want, right? Yeah. And what that does is it sets them up for success in the long run, because chances are they're not just asking for things that they want in the occupational sense. They're asking for things maybe in their personal life. In every domain in their life, they're specifying what they want and they're asking for it, and they're not too concerned with the outcome of how they may be perceived. And I think that is so crucial. What do you reckon?
I agree. And I think it's not just asking for what they want because they want more money or because they want more status at their job. They know their self-worth at the end of the day. They know what they can provide. They know what they can bring to the workplace. So it's asking, again, within reason. They're backing up their reasoning for asking with logic, with rationale. You're coming to the table and saying, hey, I can give you X, Y, and Z. Could I please have X, Y, and Z in return? Again, it's a delicate dance, because we're not encouraging people to be like tick for tack, like you give and you take. That's not what we're talking about here, but it's about the understanding of, we deserve certain levels of, whether it be praises, whether it be relationships, and it's okay to ask, because if you don't ask, you won't get. As the quote says, ask and you shall receive.
And look, what you mentioned there, it's very true, and something that I try to remind myself of. And look, as positive as we try to be in the Big Bros podcast, the reality is the world is a big, scary place. People are cruel, and it is kind of, as they say, dog eat dog world. And you got to protect your own interests. That means having to have uncomfortable conversations where you ask for things.
Yeah.
And again, as I said, it could be small things or big things. Jeremy, I want to ask you, when have you asked for something that put you out of your comfort zone? You mentioned something about getting food from the Australian Open.
Out of my comfort zone. Oh, yeah, I did mention that one to you over lunch. That was the first thing that came to my mind. I don't know why, but I just remember over the summer, like I work at the Australian Open most summers, and I was standing up in the queue at the salad station, and I was, loading up my salad. Well, this is the thing. I wasn't loading up my salad. The person behind the counter was loading up the salad for me. And, there they go. I asked for grilled chicken. They put like 2 tenderloins in. you know? And look, I understand, you know, everyone needs to get their chicken, and there's certain budgets and allowances for each people to have. But I just thought, you know what? Why not ask for some more chicken? And it's really simple and sounds really cliche, but I feel like something small like that is not something that I would have had the courage to do back in school, even just fresh out of school. I don't know why. I couldn't tell you why. Probably because of that imposter syndrome of like, who am I to like ask for something more? But you know, I asked for a couple more tenderloins of chicken, got those couple tenderloins of chicken, and the person who was serving me for the rest of the tournament just did it out of habit.
Well,
They knew that like that's what I wanted, and yeah, I think it's also about how you ask it. You know, I didn't say like, oh, can I have some more chicken, please, with an abrupt tone. It's, can I have, like, you know, if it's okay, I understand if not, but would love to have a couple more pieces of chicken. And oftentimes the answer is like, yeah, sure, no worries, like, it's fine. So really small example, really dumb example, but it works.
Well, it sets a precedent as well. But another thing this kind of reminded me of is I used to listen to Rob Dial's Mindset Mentor, and something that he would say to his listeners for how to cultivate confidence in oneself is next time you go get a coffee or a tea or a hot chocolate, whatever it is, ask for 10% off. And he said the point isn't for you to get 10% off. It's for you to get into that position where you're uncomfortable and having to ask someone, like a random total stranger, a request. Because what you're doing there is you're demonstrating confidence that you're not going to be too concerned with what the other person says. And it's like, it sounds like a bit of a cheesy exercise.
That's a weird one.
It's a cheesy exercise, but I think there's something to it, because, you know, how often are you know, you're ordering a coffee, you're thinking, you know, in Melbourne especially, coffee prices because of inflation, they're just rising, you know.
Mate, $5 is the cheapest coffee you can get these days, I
Exactly.
reckon.
So kind of topical, right? So if you go in and say, you know, is it okay if I get 10% off the coffee? And if they say no, they say no. But if they say yes, they say yes. But what it does do is you end up doing a exercise for your own confidence levels.
Yeah.
And I think that's the purpose of it. Forget the bloody coffee. It's more so that if you're willing to ask for things in such a situation, you're priming yourself to ask for more important things later in life.
I understand the sentiment behind that one, but I think with the coffee example, look, I think you also understand that like people have a business at the end of the day as well, and times can be tough, especially with inflation and rising costs. But
I think you meant more like, you know, your Starbucks, your big chains, coffee places. But not some mum and pop business.
I reckon, I understand the sentiment, but I think I would like save that sentiment for an example where it's like maybe you're asking the waiter for their number if you fancy them. Mm-hmm. That's an uncomfortable situation for some people, and that's not being afraid to ask. That's maybe what I would lean towards more so, but I understand.
I get you.
Yeah.
I got to ask you, where does the halo effect come in?
Yeah, really interesting concept, the halo effect. As suggested by the name, kind of implying that you've got a halo around your head, like kind of like an angel. But I think it speaks about how if you ask for certain things, if you do it from a sense of compassion, care, and you have a little bit of enthusiasm and confidence in it, and maybe a sense of attractiveness about yourself when you are asking for certain things, you're probably more likely to receive what you want to get. And that's what the halo effect kind of talks about. So again, I think if we employ that confidence and enthusiasm when we are asking for things without being entitled or pushy, you might feel a sense of halo effect about yourself.
I think it does, because as soon as you radiate confidence, others can kind of sense that as well, and that can work to your advantage. And I think also, since when you're younger, everyone's so scared of that whole idea of, you know, the spotlight effect, it can set you apart from so many people by just going for what you want.
Yeah.
And I can't stress that enough. If I can tell 17, 18-year-old Ilan to just be a little bit more confident and not care about what others might think, I would have probably saved myself a lot of rumination. I would have saved myself a lot of time of making certain decisions, right? To go this way, not to go this way.
It's so easy though to sit here and just say, be more confident as a youngster and just ask for things as a youngster. Because I know when I was in that position in school, I was really scared and really afraid to ask. So what is one way that I guess you would advise or just give a tip to a youngster to toy with the idea of being a little bit more confident in the way they ask for things?
I think it comes down to the more you do it, the more confident you'll become. And I think it ties into the whole imposter syndrome that we spoke about earlier. But to simplify it, I think becoming aware of what you want, specifying what you want, not assuming that other people just know what you want, that can go a long way because that just informs all your other decisions. The next thing after is kind of, doing a quick cost benefit of analysis, just saying, what's the cost of me asking? What's the cost of me not asking?
Yeah, just the pros and cons, weighing it up.
Exactly. And then
what do I have to lose essentially?
Exactly. What do you have to lose? And that could kind of logically set yourself up and you might convince yourself, there's no reason to not be afraid. But your brain and your emotions, they're very, they work together, but they can be in contradiction sometimes. The head and the heart, as they say.
Yeah.
That fear of going for things, right?
Exactly.
So I think it then comes down to, again, being self-aware of what you want, not assuming that other people know what you want, and then taking action. And start with something small, right? As a 17-year-old, I doubt you're going to be asking, your boss of a corporate job for a raise. I really doubt it's that... those little things. But, let's simplify it. At school, you are...
Asking a girl out.
Asking a girl... I was going to say more. Let's say you're in class, right? And you feel like you've got a really stupid question.
Yeah.
And you know that you need this question answered because it's going to be something that's going to be assessed. But you're really afraid of how the others in your class might perceive you. You might think, oh my God.
The cost is social embarrassment.
Social embarrassment, right? And, you're also maybe... coming up with scenarios where your teacher's like, well, you should know this.
Yeah.
And look, I'm not saying that's not a possibility. Anything can happen in this world. The teacher can, just erupt at you and say, you should know this by now, mate. This is a bit dangerous.
But if they're a good teacher.
If they're a good teacher, if they're understanding, if you're nice about it, you need, at the end of the day, even if you do risk the social embarrassment, you are putting your needs first, aren't you?
Exactly.
If you want to do well in that next, maths, English, whatever, the science assessment, you want to ask so your query is cleared up. You shouldn't think about that social embarrassment. So I think even, for some that might be a big step, right?
Yeah.
So
definitely.
find your small step. Could, for some others, asking a girl out might be the most frightening thing in the world.
Yeah, especially when you're watching too much like High School Musical and you see like the guy going to ask the girl out in the middle of the quadrangle or in the middle of like the tuck shop, like everyone's eating lunch and they've asked the girl out for formal and she says no and she storms off and and she goes and talks to all of her friends about it and then the bloke's left there just feeling like really like utterly depressed and embarrassed about himself. I mean, those were the thoughts that were going through my mind when I'm watching these like American movies from back in the day. But I think things are slowly changing. I think
I just don't think that's reality. I think it's
not.
Movies
it's
have just
movies,
fucked us up in that way. But yeah, look, if that would just be my simple advice, is just not be a little bit I think it's going to become our motto of the show, but be selfish but within reason. Take care of your interests.
And I think that goes without saying that young boy Jason Horne-Francis took on that mindset, played at the football club of North Melbourne for 1 year, and he thought, I've had enough here. I don't want to be here anymore. And what did he do? He asked for a trade. And people are quick to jump on him and be like, but where's the loyalty? You were a number one pick for our football club. You were the future. He doesn't care. There's no loyalty in football these days. If it is, like that player is well and truly commended because I think Jason Horne-Francis was a prime example of not being afraid to ask. And what did he do? He got what he asked for. So, as we said earlier, ask and you shall receive. So maybe we can all take a leaf out of Jason Horne-Francis's book.
I don't know if he's the best person because he's got such a bad reputation, I think, in the AFL world. But honestly, it comes with so many things. In a friendship setting, right? You feel like one of your friends aren't being respectful of a boundary that you have. Asking for your friend to respect that boundary is a prime example of that.
Yeah.
Asking to spend more time with your significant other, designating a day saying, can we have this day as like a date night? That's asking for something that you want. Being clear and specific, asking for that raise, another example of that. So it's a skill that is transferable in your personal life, in your occupation, and it's something that needs to be developed, and it is a huge predictor of success.
Amazing. I agree. Anything else to add, Ilan?
I don't think so. I think this is just one of those points. I think we've hammered the point hard enough. We've even mentioned Jason Horn-Francis.
And I think we'll leave it there then.
I think we'll leave it there. So let's wrap it up. Guys, thank you once again for tuning in to yet another Big Bros episode 15. If you enjoyed this episode, if you think that someone, maybe your friends, family may resonate with the message that we've spoken about here, please don't hesitate to send it to them. And if you've enjoyed, why not rate the show 5 stars, like us, subscribe to us, and
that's it.
Yeah,
I think you've covered it all. Alrighty. Happy Tuesday, everyone, and have a good week. We'll see you next time.
Bye-bye.